This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska.
And welcome back to the Hunt Nebraska cabin. We're doing another hangout here. We've got the full crew. We're getting back to full force here after the beginning of the new year. We got one Jeff Rollinson sitting right over there, one Jackson Ellis, both with the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, and we've got our buddy Hunter back on the boards over here from the National Wild Turkey Federation, me, just Hershey. We're just going to have some fun today, guys. We're kind of getting back into the swing of things at the office. Isn't it amazing? There's just a little lag. We're excited to get back into the office, but after the holidays, it's kind of like, work.
We're back.
You know, it really is a little difficult, I'll be honest with you, because the holidays, I usually take off a few days and do a little hunting. And, that week of getting up and going hunting and coming home and doing whatever you want to do, it's not easy to get back into the swing of things after that. But we're here and getting ready to get back in the swing of things.
Well, I think one thing that I always kind of look forward to and yet dread is beginning of the new year, usually conferences and meetings seem to be the soup du jour. And a lot of folks try to knock things out. And first few meetings, great, get you pumped up. But after a while, it's kind of like we're still talking.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well,
and we've had
just meeting.
We're supposed to, but you and I are supposed to be at a conference here later this week, and of course now that's been altered. So we're still living in the throes of altered plans, altered lifestyles, and so that takes its toll as well. So
all right, we're going to start off with some hunting headlines here. And I want to know, I'm going to ask you guys a question. What is the longest shot you have ever made? And now I'm talking, you can say hunting and it's got to have hit the target, all right? You've got to have harvested that deer, that duck, whatever it is. Or we could also toss in at the target range as well. What is the longest shot you've ever made successfully? Jackson, I know you're looking. You're thinking.
I don't think I've taken a shot more than 225-ish. I think that's probably
225.
That's probably the furthest shot I've ever taken on that was an elk. Yep.
Okay, all right, Hunter.
Mine's a little less than that, 100. I would say at a range, primarily because I'm a shotgun hunter, so you don't really take shots longer than that. I mean, you can, but not really common with a slug.
I'm with you. I mean, you've moved to Nebraska from Wisconsin, where deer hunting was shotgun,
right?
And some of the denser woods there on the island that you hunt, I'm kind of similar. I've probably only on the range taken it out to 150, 175. In the field, my furthest shot is probably it was with a muzzleloader, probably at 70 yards at a pronghorn. So Jeff, I know you're kind of the handgun rifle guy of the group. I want to hear some impressive numbers here.
I don't know about impressive. At the range, we make a makeshift range out of my brother-in-law's place, and about a little under 300 yards, probably 275, 280 with a handgun. And of course, we're talking long range type handgun. But in the field, 140 with a handgun on deer, but about the maximum I've ever shot. Small game, a little bit beyond that, coyotes and such.
And I bring this up for two reasons, because this last winter, a new world record has been achieved for longest distance shot. Now, this was not at an animal. This was not hunting. This was at a target. It was part of it. And these aren't guys that are just messing around in their backyard either. This is from the Global Precision Group. They set a new world record for longest rifle shot at 6,012 yards.
Oh my God!
That's a ways out there. I can't even. I get tired driving 6,012 yards. I'll be honest with you.
It says that converts over, and I didn't do the math. I'm going with their math. This is from the Hunting News. 3.4 miles.
Oh my God!
Can you imagine that?
Just imagine the optics you need to even be able to see the target at that.
I bet they had more than a few people looking at there. The bullet had a flight time of 17 seconds, required more than 600 MOA of elevation, so 10-degree barrel elevation. I mean, that was
If you pull the trigger and then you can drink an entire can of pop before the bullet hits the target, that's a long ways away. Now for the range, that's awesome. Obviously, when it comes to the field, I'd like to have it 6 yards. I'd like to have all my shots real close. I'm not into the long range hunting scene, but there's some folks that have some incredible capabilities. There's no question about it.
Kind of got more popular, has it not? I mean, you've seen some TV shows pop up. You've seen some postings online about people trying to do that. I know even Jeff, you've worked with rangers quite a bit, and there is a small group of folks that are saying, hey, can't we get something like at 600 yards, 1,000 yards, something along those lines?
That's one of the toughest issues when it comes to building ranges, because you said it, Hershey, it's a handful of people. I mean, the bulk of our shooters and hunters, they want a 100-yard rifle range, maybe 200 yards, and that gets much smaller group. And, to be honest, on pistol shooting, about 15 yards is where the bulk of all handguns are shot in ranges, and a lot of times inside that. And so, but out to 25 yards, even 50 yards for handgun hunters, and then of course long-range handgun goes to the rifle range. But a few ranges out there, 500 and 600 yards, not a huge draw for those.
Boy, I'm one of those guys that even at that 100-yard range, I'm taking my scope and I'm dialing it up a ways to see. Just like, man, I can't see that bullseye. I either need bigger targets or better eyes, I guess. But I wonder how that works when you're setting a world record like that. How many practice shots do you get? All right, guys, this is it, right? Nope, that was practice. All right, another time. Here we go.
Just funning.
Yeah.
Do they just need to hit the paper, or do they need to put it in a certain diameter radius? Or it's interesting.
I don't know what a hit is considered at 3.5 miles, but I suspect there's some leeway there. I don't think we're talking thumbnails. I think we're talking something a little bigger than that.
Said they were aiming at a gnat. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But that is something that's out there, and if you've got the skills and the equipment to do that, that's pretty darn impressive to say the least. I know I'm a shotgun hunter as well, and where I grew up, we hunted deer and everything with shotguns, to be quite honest with you. And I still got that mentality. Even I have not taken a deer with a high power rifle. Period. I have not done it. I've missed a couple, because I get those hairs on it, and I just assume it's going to be like a video game. I just have to touch the fire button, and I hit it about like that, too. Just like, that looks good. Pull the trigger. And
he shoots a rifle like he shoots a shotgun.
Yeah. And every once in a while, I've got one of those guns that kind of has that third safety position, so it locks the bolt, and then, you can move it to that half. You can work the bolt, but it won't fire. Mm-hmm. And I get caught in that middle position. Yeah. And you talk about a good gun slap. You'll see it right there. It's pretty significant.
Well, we teach a lot on the range. We are all involved in doing a lot of teaching for shooting sports and whatnot. But few people really get that intimate with a firearm, that they understand breathing and they understand control of their muscle spasms that they don't even know they have until they're sitting there delicately trying to touch that trigger, and their understanding of how their body feels, half breath, full breath, when they let a breath out, the changes in the reflection of light, how that impacts it. So people who put all those skills together, and I know some of those people. I am not one of those people. I fight those things at times on the range, but those people that can put all that together, they're pretty remarkable.
It's an impressive skill set.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is. All right, moving on. Here's kind of an interesting one, Jackson. I want you to get to hear this one, because I'm going to bug you about this pretty quick.
Okay.
Construction worker. This is a little bit further south. Has to take a leak. He's working on a place. He's in the woods. He's got to take a leak. So what does he do? He walks in, and while he's completing that task, here's what sounds like somebody shouting for help. And sure enough, a hunter had fallen out of his tree stand and impaled himself on a branch and was calling for help. Now, luckily, this construction worker wasn't alone. They were able to get the emergency services there, probably saved the guy's life. And what this was, the hunter had made his own tree stand with branches nailed to the tree as steps. He missed a step, fell, and was impaled while still being suspended in the air. Fortunately, the two men that were called to the situation were tall enough to hold him up while the paramedics cut the branch off the tree and all that good stuff. So I think this is a good spot to talk a little bit about tree stand safety. There's still some folks out there from time to time that probably don't make the best decisions when it comes to what kind of tree stand they're putting into place. So what do we usually talk about in bow hunter education?
Well, first things first is the fall arrest system, but we'll come back to that.
Okay, all right.
There's a couple of things that we teach that you kind of touched on right off the bat, which is homemade tree stands. I and hunter education recommends that you buy a tree stand. If you're not, you really got to trust your skills. You really, there's a reason the Tree Stand Manufacturers Association exists, to set those standards for safety in tree stands, and that's why we're trying to move away from homemade tree stands. But
I think that's the big plus right there. I mean, you still see them out in the woods, and we've seen some strange ones. We've got pictures of people that have taken, folding chairs and bolted them to the tree. We've seen people that have taken an old piece of metal from the farmyard and just kind of welded an extra step or two and taken the old metal tractor seat and put it on top. All that type of stuff. Those scare me.
oh yeah,
Well, they should. They should. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why people go to school to become engineers, and then they design tree stands that stand the test of time. And then those of us who are kind of makeshift engineers, we don't understand what load rating that weld is capable of holding, or worse yet, the nail in the tree with the board. I mean, and then of course the impact nature has over time.
Yep. I've seen a lot of homemade tree stands that are very sketchy.
Yeah.
You rarely see one that you're like, that's a great.
No place to cut. It's no place to cut corners.
No,
no. That should be some of your best engineering work if you were going to do that. But I agree with you. Buy a tree stand that's got the TMA seal of approval on there, and you don't have to worry about the weld, the bolt, the whatever.
I mean, the good thing is, at least anecdotally, year over year, I see less and less of those homemade tree stands. And that's just the evolution of tree stands. People realize your manufactured stands are safer, they're easier to put up each year, and that makes the jump a little bit easier too. But when it comes to hunting safety, that's firearm safety and tree stand safety, I absolutely take that 100% serious, and just do it. It's gonna save your life eventually. So,
and you're not saving a lot of money by homemaking a tree stand. You can spend a lot of money on tree stands. Don't get me wrong, and I may have been accused of doing such things, but you can buy an inexpensive tree stand that will be just about as much as you're spending on lumber.
Oh my gosh, today.
Especially today.
I mean, I was at the lumber yard the other day. I got a sliver from looking at a board, and I thought maybe they're going to charge me for that. I mean, it's that bad. It's that bad.
well, getting back to the fall arrest system.
Waiting for the rim shot. Okay,
Yeah.
we're going to edit that, Jeff. We're going to edit that in.
Getting back to the fall arrest system, I mean, even those have evolved tremendously in comfort and making them into vests that are comfortable to wear. Barely feels like you have them on, and I mean, it's just once you start doing it, it's your routine. It's like the snap of a finger. It's that easy to do.
Yep.
So.
Now, did any of you guys growing up, or even recently, build a tree house? You found the old big tree in the yard. You grabbed some 2x4s. You nailed some steps to the tree. I remember doing that, and I remember being able to climb up in that tree. But the ride down was just, you couldn't see that 2x4 sticking out there. That was scary. I mean, I had a hard time using that, even when I was little and a little bit more fearless.
We used pine trees, so we had a nice climb up and down, but I can still feel the sap on my hands.
Yeah. Well, we all climbed trees when we were kids, right? I mean, that was a pastime. I mean, we had big pines in the back, and they are Austrian pines, and they get those nice big branches, and they were just perfect for climbing. And of course, the next step is, well, we got to build something up there, right? We could stay up there all day long if we build something up there, and that probably was one thing. But even the engineering marvel that we might have put into building a tree house, most people don't put that into putting a tree stand. They're minimalists, and I think that. Time has proven that's not a good idea.
Well, and if you'd gone back a couple of years, you'd probably seen those nails or screws, if you were fortunate enough, kind of pulling through that board as you went. And some tree stands that I've seen out there, even some of the old metal ones, after about 4 or 5 years, of being neglected, basically, they're sketchy looking to begin with. And yet there's folks that think, that's fine, I'll be good up there. And just like, I want to enjoy my hunt rather than every creak and squeak that's going to be caused by the wind, having to wonder, am I going down now? Am I falling now? No. All right. But that's a good one. Buy what you can, and definitely gotten more affordable and makes use of that fall arrest system. That's a good one. Another question as we get into a third headline, age. At what age should youngsters start hunting?
What a loaded question.
No pun intended.
Yep.
No one's going to jump at that. Hunter, we'll toss you under the bus first.
I think the age at which you can legally start hunting, depending on your state, and then second comes down to the parent or the mentor that's going to take them out when they feel comfortable enough taking them out.
Maybe a better way to ask this is, what age were you? How old were you when you first hunted by yourself?
Oh, by yourself.
By yourself. Now, I've changed it a little bit. I've changed it just a little bit.
I don't want to incriminate my parents, but
Did squirrels in the backyard with a pellet gun count?
I think it should.
Okay, well then I was probably 8. I think 8.
So Bellevue squirrel season. That's good to know.
I would say around 10 if we're talking backyard squirrels. Big game, deer, turkey. I didn't start, I don't think, until I was 14 hunting on my own. But that was just because of legal requirements and accompaniment laws in Wisconsin. So,
okay, Jeff.
yeah, I was young.
Yeah,
I was young, and but here's the deal. You know, before I was a hunter, I was a shooter, and my dad would take me shooting, and we'd go out to the farm, and we would we had an area out there that we used as our little shooting range that we did a lot of shooting. And I mean, I would save up cans, pop cans, soda bottles, whatever, and we'd go out there and just have a blast. But no pun intended. But the one thing my dad taught me and all that was an incredible respect for firearm safety. And he was an old, military guy, and he was one of those people that firearm safety was pretty prominent in his repertoire. And so I learned firearm safety at a very, very young age. And it wasn't like it was a good idea. It was like, this is how things are going to go for if you want to continue doing this. And so I think my parents trusted me to make smart decisions and good decisions, and I think that certainly depends on the child and the parents' understanding of that child's ability to make good decisions.
Here in Nebraska, we got to be minimum of 10 before you can legally get a deer permit.
Big game, yep.
For our other minimum ages, there really isn't any for small game or turkey. Obviously, elk and pronghorn are a little bit different. You'll want to check into that. Hunter education, minimum age to get certified.
12. Well, 11. You can get in the class at 11.
Yep.
12 is the legal requirement.
As a requirement on that one. And Jeff, you said a lot right there. In Maryland, I bring this up because in Maryland, they have the ability, if you've passed hunter safety to access, if you've passed hunter education, there was the ability with your parents' permission to hunt by yourself. All right? Now there's some legislation being introduced, HB 636, that actually kind of addresses prohibiting a person from storing a firearm where anyone under the age of 18 can gain access to it. However, that also means that it prevents anyone 16 and under, from what I'm reading, to go hunting on their own, which would come with a $5,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison, which is pretty steep.
Yeah, sometimes those laws that we look at sometimes have unintended consequences, or maybe intended, I don't know, but sometimes they have unintended consequences that we have to be cautious of as well. Because, here in Nebraska, it's not uncommon for young teenagers to be able to get out there and hunt pheasants or quail or what have you, and we have that every year, and they do an excellent job. I mean, we don't hear of a lot of issues or concerns. They do an incredibly good job, assuming they were taught right by their parents, and that works out really well. And certainly, you'd hate to see anything that would squelch those young adults from being able to get out into the field.
Well, you think about it, here in Nebraska, I mean, we're still pretty agricultural based. And you think of what some of those youngsters are doing, working cattle and livestock and working the ranch and all that type of stuff. And by that time, running bobcats and tractors and all that type of equipment. And, it's not uncommon for them to, all right, saw some rabbits over here, or quail, we're going to go chase them. And as long as it's legal and safely done, obviously, no issue there. It just kind of, I think, probably points more towards that urbanization, because some of the other youngsters as you get into the city, probably don't have that opportunity to do a lot of those things.
I think that's a good point. Urbanization is we're just getting more and more removed from the natural world. In the natural world, things like having guns and a pocket knife and all those things, those are just things we all grew up with. And as you move away from the natural world, those become things that we don't grow up with as much. And so it becomes an oddity for some people to think, well, that youngster would have go out and shoot a quail or pheasant or a squirrel or a rabbit, but so, yeah, I think urbanization probably has a huge impact on that.
That it does. And obviously, for those that are eligible, hunter education, great way to get some experience around that stuff, some knowledge. And for some, it might be review at that age, but even for adults, it might be some new stuff to get covered there as well. All right, moving on. Our own headlines here in the great state of Nebraska. We've got our antlerless deer season rolling on here in the state of Nebraska. Across the state through the 16th of January for those on private land in the river antlerless permit area. That goes through the end of the month. Are you guys still out in the field?
Yep. Well, not my tag, but we'll be out.
No, goose.
No?
There's geese. There's geese in town. We're moving into the state.
This is kind of different. I probably, this would probably shock me about 10 years ago, Jeff. I would have seen myself more as a waterfowler and you more as a big game hunter. And now, I'll probably sneak out of the office today because it's cold to sit one more time to see if I can't fill that doe tag. And you're probably going to be in a goose pit.
If you'd tell me that, a few years ago, I told you there's no way. Because like you said, I identify as a handgun hunter, a big game hunter, not at all hardly identify as a bird hunter. I spend more hours bird hunting than I do anything, but there's just something about it. And, it's a lot of fun. There's no question there, especially when those geese just lock up and just start gliding in. There's not a lot of other places you'd rather be at the moment. I can tell you that right now. That's a good place to be.
Well, I like it in cold weather because I don't have to worry so much about what direction the wind's coming to control my scent. Stealthily sneak in while you're wearing that parka and those insulated bibs.
Yeah.
You're trying to be stealthy and you're not. And so it's just a kind of a wait and hopefully haven't bumped in out of the area. Waterfowl hunting, you can make a little noise. You can be social about
Cook bacon and eggs.
Exactly.
It's a whole different game.
It's kind of like, I'm going to turn the buddy heater on. I just hope it doesn't click too loud. Click. Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Click. Uh-oh. Click. Okay. All right. And then it starts to sputter. You're thinking, can they hear that? Can they hear that? I hope the wind's blowing the right direction so they can't smell that. And I've never had a deer do that, but in goose hunting, propane runs out. I'll run back to the truck, get a new tank. I'll be right back.
Go bring a tank back with you. Yeah, we don't worry about noise or scent. And like I said, it's not the world I grew up in, but it's certainly a world in the last 15 years I've really enjoyed and probably continue to.
So, Hunter, got more deer hunting planned?
I think it's wrapped up unless I get an itch. I think I'm gonna move on to rabbits and squirrels, but we'll see. You never know. But I do have to get my 2022 hunt permit and habitat stamp. Yep, so it's a
good point.
Good reminder for
Yes,
everybody. It's the new year.
There you go. Now, I bring up deer specifically, but we've already begun our big game meetings here in the state of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. A little bit about that, folks. If you haven't been a part of these or know what they are, I definitely suggest that you're interested in big game hunting and deer, elk, pronghorn, whatever. Tune in to one of these. Join one. We've got several across the state. They're already underway. They get started at 7 p.m. local time. But from Hebron, Fremont, Lincoln, Cambridge, Alma, Alliance, Burwell, Valentine, they're going on through this month of January. If you're not able to make any of those in person, then we've also got the virtual meeting taking place Tuesday, January 18th. You need to get signed up for that, and you can do that at our website, outdoornebraska.org. But this is a wonderful thing. Have you guys been to any of these big game meetings before?
These big game meetings. No, I haven't. These big game meetings, though, and I'm gonna attend one this year because these big game meetings have been a really great introduction for people to meet the biologists who are in charge of big game management and have their voices heard. And, we haven't done these forever. I mean, these in the last several years have come up as very prominent. And so kudos to the wildlife team for doing those because if there's a vocal group out there, our deer hunters are we're probably one of the most vocal groups, next maybe to waterfowl hunters. We're probably one of the most vocal groups out there.
Jackson, have you been to one?
No, I'm not. Not to the big game specific ones. I've been to commission meetings. But.
Commission meetings. Okay. Yep. And I think those are all wonderful opportunities to, get to add input. Hear what's going on, have your voice heard. You're just moving here, so I won't ask you if you've been to one of the Nebraska ones, Hunter, but have you ever taken part in any of the ones done in your home state?
Not big game specific, but I've attended some public meetings with biologists, and I think they're a great opportunity to, not only meet your biologists, but hear the data, hear what's going on from their perspective, and then provide your input.
And I couldn't agree more with what all three of you have said. I've been to a few of them, probably more virtually. We've done some on Facebook Live. We've done some via Zoom. But it is interesting just to see how much research and background's going on into these decisions. Sometimes we oversimplify it, or if you're reading message boards or Facebook, you kind of think that we do oversimplify it, that there's just one or two people saying, that's what it's going to be. I'm not taking any more input, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Yep. A lot of balancing act, a lot of thing going on as far as management, not just of the resource, but also of the social expectations from all Nebraskans, because all these big game, they impact, they're owned by everybody that lives in Nebraska. Hunters, obviously, we have a pretty vested interest in it, but it's also some of the landowners, some of the people that are driving down the roads, all that type of stuff. They get a say into the side of it as well. I'm going to toss this question out knowing what the answer might be, because I've got a few other topics that we're going to hit on deer here. But what do you think the number one suggestion given at these deer meetings or these big game meetings often is, or might be again this year?
From the public?
Let's say from the hunter.
Okay. Good question. This year is probably going to be less doe tags, in my opinion.
Okay.
From the rumor mill, the whisperings I've been hearing on different social medias, people were saying they weren't seeing as many deer this year.
And I'd say the harvest kind of backed that up, down, I believe, right around 12% overall this last year. Obviously, we still got some antlerless harvest probably coming in, but a bulk of it takes place during November, during the firearm season. So that could definitely be a big part of it. Jeff?
I'd say similar deal. They want to see more deer.
His answer.
They want to see more deer. I can. And they want to see more deer and or bigger deer.
See, Jackson, don't let him get away with that. You did that in grade school. I know the answer to. Oh no, Jennifer took my answer. I was going to say just what she said.
Well, I've got more answers if you want to keep rolling.
Hunter, what do you think?
Well, that was my first blush, but I'll go out on a limb and say maybe more access opportunities for deer hunting.
Access opportunities. That's what I think it's amazing, and that's one thing I think most folks don't realize how much our biologists and wildlife crew and agency as a whole dive into access. Millions of dollars spent on that each year to try to gain more access and get creative in the ways we can provide that quality access out there as well. So you got another guess?
There's always a faction of people that want to change our rifle season dates.
What on earth do you mean, Jackson?
I know. This is from the very dark corners of the web.
The very dark corners of the web. Yeah.
But you do hear that one, especially from our archery hunters, and I've got my own feelings about it as well. But
you have feelings about that?
I do, opinions and whatnot.
You have opinions
and whatnot
as well. Yeah.
And whatnot.
And whatnot,
etc.
And now Katie gets to influence those a little bit more. I mean, sometimes she gets to tell you what your opinions are. Just wait, it's coming.
Yeah.
You guys haven't been married yet a full year, so maybe it hasn't kicked in yet. I think that's a common one. I think there's a lot of that interest in there. And this is one that I always go back to the data. And this one is kind of interesting because you do hear that. Why do we get to hunt the rut with rifles? That's just decimating our deer, and they never get to be big and all that type of stuff. And if you do go to some of those spots to hear other hunters talk about that, and you talk to other like-minded folks, you'd assumed everybody wanted that rifle season. Usually pushed later is what I hear from certain groups. But we've done the research, and oftentimes most people want it right where it is. There are a good, significant number of people that want it moved.
Yep.
But more, according to the survey work that our wildlife division has done, want it moved earlier than there is those that want it moved later. So sometimes you got to be careful. I think that's something we probably see quite a bit, Jeff, is sometimes when we get on a message board or a forum or something like that, we've got people that are really vested in hunting. And overall, some of the people that hunt each year here in Nebraska, it's not necessarily their top priority.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. The other one I hear a lot of is point restrictions. a lot of people compare us to the states around us, and so that's an interesting kind of a topic, and we might have to do a whole podcast on that. But
I think
yeah.
we might have to get Luke Meduna, our big game program manager, in here to talk a little bit about that, because I know he's done some reading and research on, like culling.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how can you tell or improve the genetics of your deer herd?
You can't.
It's dang tough unless you actually have an insight into the genetic side of it. But there are some different things that take place. Obviously, if you let a deer age out, he's going to maximize that antler growth, but that might not be much. Jeff, I think you shared an article of a deer that was, 5-6 years old that was harvested in the study area out east, if I remember right. And if you looked at that rack on that deer hunter, it probably would have passed for a 2.5-year-old deer here in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. So there's a company that does cementum aging. So you send in the teeth, and they actually take a slice of the teeth,
which is more accurate than what we normally have to do with just wear and tear.
Right. Yep. And part of the process is they ask you if they can publish your results. So on their social medias, you send in a picture of the deer and the teeth. And so I make a game out of it because you have to actually scroll down through the post to see the age on the deer. So I try to look at the picture, think what the deer might age at. I'm wrong every time, every single time. And I like to think I'm good at aging deer. Yeah. Every single time I'm wrong. Well, it's amazing.
A little bit of science, a little bit of art. Yeah, and when it comes to aging, experience is the number one criteria in my opinion. Yep. People that have a lot of experience to judge from are pretty good at that, but it's not as straightforward as people think it is.
You mentioned the science and the art. The science gets you up to about 2.5 years.
Yeah, then that's experience.
Their milk teeth, and then it's kind of like you said, it's experience, and that's why oftentimes you'll see the same biologist at the same check stations each November. Mule deer up in the sand hills, their teeth wear differently than white-tailed deer do down here in the southeast, where we don't have as much of that grit and grind on the teeth as they would up there while they take part in their diet. So kind of interesting thing out there. So, and Jeff, I tossed something to you, and you didn't really bite on it, but our average hunter here in the state of Nebraska, out of 5 years, how often do they go hunting?
I know this one.
Or how much do they buy a permit?
Yeah, for deer hunting, about probably 3 or 4 out of 5 years.
And with our regular hunt permit?
Probably in that 2 out of 5 years.
Yeah, 2 to 3.
Our deer hunters are loyal. Yeah, and it's pretty easy to see why. I mean, incredible deer hunting in the great state of Nebraska. We raise some monsters every year. A lot of deer in different places that keep hunters fairly happy, but and so we're talking 80%, 84, 85% of our deer hunters come back every year and buy a permit. That's pretty astonishing for any hunting cohort.
It is, but that doesn't necessarily they're going to be out there the 9 days. They're probably out there 2 to 3 days at most, and some of them are just wanting an opportunity at a deer. They're not really worried about. I'm sure we dream about getting the big one, but they're not necessarily worried about that. They're more, first priority is get a deer.
Yeah.
Second priority is if it's got antlers, cool. It's got really big antlers, really cool type thing.
It's funny you say opportunity, because I remember years ago an old hunter told me that. He said, it's your guys' job to make sure I have an opportunity. It's my job after that. And I kind of thought, I get that. But, once you have the opportunity, you got to run with it. Yeah. you got to run with it.
And I'll have to dig it up. I did a study on it probably about 12, 13 years ago now. And I was kind of known as a big deer state as well. But most of their deer hunters, same thing. They would not pass up an opportunity to harvest a deer just to wait for a bigger deer.
Yep. Yeah.
Especially after about the second set.
Yeah.
Well, you do that too often, and you go 2 or 3, 4 seasons without harvesting a deer. So you got to have expectations, realistic expectations.
Yep, I did that this year. And regretting it now, but that's all part of hunting. And so
once you've done it for 3 or 4 years, it gets easier. Yeah. Trust me, it gets easier.
I think it just points to the idea that everybody hunts for different reasons.
Absolutely.
And for those that really want to go for that trophy, for that really mature deer, you've got to let a lot pass. For those that are just out there for the experience and to harvest a deer and put some venison in the freezer, probably a little bit less that goes into is that one enough right there. So lots of fun, a lot of interesting things out there, and that's part of the fun of these big game meetings, folks. Make sure you take part of it. This agency works on input from the public and those that own the resource. So be a part of that, and definitely from input from those meetings go into decision making a lot more than putting something on Facebook or posting on a web page.
That is one of the kind of the frustrations I have. Is you see a lot of people that have that misconception that we don't listen to the public input, and that it's just it's falling on deaf ears. And that's not the case at all.
No. Well, not with our agency. No, it's not. Input on parks, wildlife, fisheries, you name it. We're seeking public and utilizing that public input.
Now, I'm not sure if our biologists will talk about this at these big game meetings or not. I haven't been able to sit in on the one that has taken place to this point, but we'll find out. And that's chronic wasting disease. That's something that has been present here in the state of Nebraska. The first time we caught it was in 2000 out in Kimball County, and we've been actually testing since 1997. First discovered in Colorado in 1967. It's kind of been making its way east ever since, and folks, you can go onto our website, outdoornebraska.org/CWD, to get the lowdown on testing that we did this last year. The results aren't completely back from that other than from our elk testing, but you can get some information on that. You can kind of see a creep from west to east here in the state of Nebraska if you follow that quite a bit. I bring that up because also in our hunting news is that a couple of things going on. They actually extended the season through the 15th of February in the great state of Montana, to address some of the CWD and special zones, special units, special permits, and some of it's just a continuation of those permits to help kind of control the spread of that. Hunters have been seen as kind of a solution in some of those areas in harvesting. I know in Wisconsin, that was a hot spot for CWD. It kind of jumped over Nebraska, I think, and got to some of those Midwestern states. And you guys did some harvests there as well.
Yep, in the early 2000s there, they had a big effort to cull deer in those hot spots, and unfortunately, it's continued to spread. But there are, using hunters as a management tool to reduce some of those populations, especially those mature deer that CWD can be so prevalent in, and especially in male deer too.
And it's definitely grown. I know some herds, not here in Nebraska, but outside of the state, up to 45% of the deer herds carrying that disease, CWD. Now, as far as I know, and Jeff, help me if I'm wrong, we've never found that deer necessarily recovers from it. It's pretty much fatal, though the length of time that it takes for that deer to succumb can vary. Again, folks, there's currently no strong evidence that CWD poses a risk to humans at all, though we often recommend that human exposure be limited, obviously, and that's why we're kind of tracking this as it goes, and just kind of keeping on top of that potential risk. In fact, in some states, Arkansas was one that they're actually asking hunters to donate some of their deer for testing and the lymph nodes that they have there. And they've actually incentivized it, Jeff. Free donation, and you get your name entered into a drawing for a lifetime hunting and fishing
I think that's a great idea.
Through their foundation.
That's an absolute great idea. Because we need the data.
Yeah.
And it's not completely convenient for hunters to provide that, so that's a great idea.
You guys have all donated deer and got lymph nodes taken out at the check station. I've done that in a couple of different states now. Yeah. And I think that's important. Have you ever had any come back positive?
No.
Nope. I have not either, but that's one that our wildlife biologist, another challenge within the management of that.
Well,
that
and
herd.
it's a big one because it has the attention of a lot of folks. Hunters, of course, monitor that. And gee whiz, CWD. That's something I don't really want to mess with. But on the same token, like you said, Hershey, no evidence that it affects people at all. So it's kind of like, we monitor that for the deer herd more because we're looking at how it impacts the deer herds and the impacts it could have long term on our deer herds, which would keep us all in a little bit of a concern when a disease like that is prevalent. But in some states, but I wouldn't say prevalent in Nebraska. Like you said, it's creeping from west to east a little more, and but something that our biologists are very much aware, very much tracking, and very much on top of. But it's a concern for people. It really is.
Well, I think it needs to be. It's one of those things that if you're getting to almost 50-50 of the population of a disease that is fatal for that type of animal, that could have an impact on the overall population of the entire herd. in that area. And so that's something that we're going to keep monitoring. And I think we don't have the answers on this one. There's no way to really, we found to, once the deer has it, to handle that.
Yeah, it's certainly prevalent enough to be of concern, of big concern. So
no, I think that the challenging part of CWD as a hunter, just of the general public, is that it's not, symptoms aren't necessarily visual, and it can take so long, 12 to up to 18 months for that deer to succumb to it, and likely they're succumbing to predation or other factors first as a result of it too. So it's just, it's out there, but it's hard to see from our perspective unless you do get your deer tested. And that's what makes it important to get it tested, so the biologist can track that information and data and try to control that.
And just like the other states, we're not able to test every deer. And so we have priority areas that kind of go by district or region each year, and we focus in on that. But I know all the hunters have the ability to send in their own lymph nodes or what they need to here in the state of Nebraska to, I believe, UNL lab, University of Nebraska in Lincoln, to get them tested if they want to do that as well. But hunters have been a key role in this. We're obviously vested, but we need to continue to have that role in the scientific study of this disease and its prevalence and march across the state. Looking at the map here in Nebraska, there's some some counties within the state that haven't had a confirmed positive yet, but they're kind of becoming more islands than anything else. So something to keep in mind, and something you can ask our biologists about anytime, as well as these big game meetings. And if they don't cover it this time, I know it'll be something in the future that they probably will as well. So that's all the headlines I have. I know we're kind of winding things down, guys. Welcome to January. Welcome to 22. Hunting season's kind of winding down. I hate to say that, but more things going to be closing here than opening up. So final thoughts for the 2022 season, the ending of the 21-22 seasons. Any thoughts, any suggestions, ideas?
Still get out. I mean, there's plenty of season to be had. Don't forget your 22 permits because the 21 permits won't do you a lot of good anymore. So don't forget to renew those. But just get out and enjoy it. Learn how to hunt in the colder weather. Dress for success in the colder weather. But there's a lot of hunting still to be had. And of course, turkey season. Yeah, we're just talking a few months down the road here, guys, and all of a sudden, gobble. So I mean, it's not over yet.
Say the fall season hasn't closed yet. We've got to the end of January.
Yeah. Well, I'm already dusting off the turkey calls, rechalking the box calls. I get a little excited about that, but a lot of goose season, a lot of small game season. Rabbit and squirrel at the end of this month, rabbit to the end of next month, and so a lot of into February, and so a lot of season to be had.
I got to assume that you're not only still waterfowl hunting and might be outfitting for deer yet this weekend, but I'm guessing that after Christmas morning, you were up on that roof to see if any of Santa's reindeer shed their antlers yet. I assume the countdown for deer shed season is on at the Ellis household.
I have started putting some dates on the calendars where we're going to be going around looking for sheds. It's always on my mind. You bet. I know there's at least 2 bucks that made it through season. That I'll be excited to find their sheds.
Do you have any new shed hunting tips for new shed hunters?
Cloudy days are my favorite. The white stands out a little bit more. Bedding areas, you're going to want to find that thermal cover, especially if the winter continues as it has for the beginning of 2022. If this continues, you're going to want to find that thermal bedding cover next to cornfields. So
I'd have to go out and give it a try.
Yep. Definitely. And the one thing I would say, if you've got snow on the ground where you're hunting right now, get out there, take a peek at it, especially if you're kind of newer to the area or to Nebraska. That's a great giveaway for where deer are hiding and using this time of the year. You can put that in the memory bank for next season if you don't put it to use this season. If you get a nice snowfall and you still got a doe tag and the opportunity to hunt them there and you're seeing lots of tracks in that cornfield or on that field edge, take advantage of it. Get out there for a great evening hunt, but even for the next year to come. A lot of that snow is disappearing, though.
And if you're hunting public, this is a great time to get out, too, because, a lot of people think late season is very hard hunting, and it can be. Deer, these animals have been hunted for a couple months now, but the people pressure wanes off considerably.
Good point.
So it's if you've been frustrated by seeing other people out there, this might be a time to get out
it's
there.
almost non-existent this time of year.
Yeah.
And predator hunting. Some of our best predator
Oh,
hunting is
yeah.
yet to come still, so don't forget about that.
That's
Dust off the calls.
Probably just starting to peak with this cold weather that's
It
finally
really
arrived.
is.
So.
This has been perfect. Little snow, a lot of cold weather. That gets predators hungry, gets them moving, gets them coming to the call.
We're going to have to talk about that in one of our next Hunt Nebraska podcasts. But I think that's where we're going to kind of put the bow on this one, folks. So make sure to stop over on your favorite listening app and give us a subscribe as well as a follow there on Facebook. Until next time.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.